At 60, Keanu Reeves stands as one of Hollywood's most beloved treasures, a rare gift the world may never see again. He is not just Neo, the man who bent reality in the Matrix. He is not just John Wick, the legendary assassin who carved vengeance into cinema history. He is the living heartbeat of movies, a quiet storm who has given his body, soul, and endless kindness to millions of fans across the world. In a world of entertainment filled with fake personalities and oversized egos, Keanu shines differently. He is the kindest, most genuine man in Hollywood, the most humble soul among all the stars. He walks among us like an angel, kind, caring, humble, and strikingly handsome. He is living proof that maybe there really is one man loved by the entire world. He makes us believe that goodness still exists and makes us wish everyone could be like him. Yet behind all that glory, behind the smile that has healed millions of broken hearts, lie wounds that will never fully heal. Cold, lonely nights and dark shadows cling to his soul, trying to tear it apart piece by piece. Now at 60 years old, the man who once seemed unbreakable is still fighting through the darkest chapters of his life. Pain refuses to let go, haunting memories surround him, and cruel health challenges grow heavier with each passing day. The tragedy of Keanu Reeves is beyond heartbreaking. The first wounds in Keanu's life were not created by fame, but by childhood itself. A father who disappeared without explanation, a mother chasing stability through broken marriages, and a young boy learning far too early that love could disappear in a single breath. Keanu Charles Reeves came into this world on September 2, 1964 in Beirut, Lebanon. Even his name carried poetry. Keanu means cool breeze over the mountains in Hawaiian. But the poetry of his early life was quickly smothered by chaos and pain. His father, Samuel Nolan Reeves Jr., was a Hawaiian geologist. His mother, Patricia Taylor, was an English costume designer. Their marriage was already falling apart when Keanu was born. Within just 2 years, their marriage collapsed completely. Keanu's earliest memories were not of comfort and safety, but of absence and emptiness. His father's shadow grew larger precisely because he disappeared. At age 2, his father was gone. At 13, Keanu saw him for the last time. Years later, Keanu would say it was as if his father simply vanished into thin air. Patricia carried the crushing weight of trying to survive as a single mother. Her career pulled the family from Beirut to Sydney, then to New York, and finally to Toronto. At each stop, she looked for security in new marriages, but each one fell apart, leaving behind a parade of stepfathers who never stayed long enough to feel like real family. Only Kim, his younger sister, shared both parents and the storms of their childhood. To Keanu, Kim was not just a sibling. She was the only proof that family could be something more than a word that meant nothing. For the Reeves children, childhood meant suitcases that were never fully unpacked, walls that never stayed familiar, and birthdays celebrated in cities that all blurred together. Home was never a safe place, only a temporary stop before the next move. School offered no relief either. Over 5 years, Keanu went through 4 different high schools, struggling to fit in anywhere. Dyslexia made reading incredibly difficult, turning every classroom into a battlefield. Teachers mistook his restless energy for bad behavior. One principal even expelled him for asking too many questions. In all this chaos, one place became his sanctuary, the ice rink. As a hockey goalkeeper, Keanu earned the nickname The Wall. Behind that goalie mask, he finally found where he belonged. He dreamed of playing professionally, maybe even skating for Canada in the Olympics. For a boy who had never had a real home, hockey was more than just a sport. It gave him purpose, joy, and proof that he could be strong and unbreakable. Then came a devastating twist of fate. At just 15 years old, a terrible injury destroyed his hockey dreams in an instant. What had been the only stable thing in his life was ripped away, teaching him once again how easily security could be destroyed. By the time he reached his late teens, Keanu had endured trauma that would have broken many adults. But these wounds did not turn him bitter or angry. Instead, they forged him into someone stronger. An absent father gave him empathy for others who felt abandoned. Dyslexia gave him patience with his own imperfections. And the injury that ended his hockey career pushed him toward acting, opening the door to the destiny that would one day make him a legend. When the hockey dream was stolen from him at 15, Keanu did not give up on life. Instead, the stage began to call to him. By the time he walked away from school, he had already decided that acting would be his salvation. He scraped together small jobs in Canadian TV shows, appeared in commercials, and even hosted a children's program where his awkward charm somehow won over young viewers. Armed with little more than a beat-up car, a suitcase, and a name most people couldn't pronounce, Keanu drove into Los Angeles, chasing a fragile hope. He rented bare apartments, stretched every dollar until his cupboards went empty, and knocked on doors that rarely opened. In a city that destroyed dreamers by the thousands, Hollywood's gates were heavy, and Keanu had only his determination. Then came small breakthroughs. Dark, independent films revealed a soul wrestling with shadows far deeper than the industry had expected. Critics began to whisper that his performances carried a weight too real to be fake. They were right. The grief on screen was a mirror of the losses he had carried all along. In this fragile window of opportunity, he also met River Phoenix, a kindred spirit who shared his hunger for truth in art. Their friendship gave Keanu for the first time a sense of belonging in an industry that had mostly greeted him with doubt. Just as he reached for more meaningful roles, destiny played another cruel trick. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure turned him into a cultural phenomenon, beloved by millions as the goofy time-traveling Ted. But what felt like a joyful break quickly became a prison. The airhead label stuck to him like glue. Even success had sharp edges, and every cheer carried its own shadow. Keanu entered the 1990s not as Hollywood's golden child, but as its quiet outsider. Yet the screen quickly revealed what others had overlooked. In Point Break, he wasn't simply an action hero. He was a man who could mix adrenaline with sincerity. The tide shifted with speed. The bus exploded, the world cheered, and overnight Keanu was launched into the stratosphere. Yet when the studio offered him a fortune for a sequel, he chose the harder road. He refused to trade his integrity for easy money. "Grief changes shape, but it never ends," he would later say. Jennifer's death was the cruelest chapter in a book already stained with loss, the moment that carved into him a final devastating lesson, that love, no matter how radiant, can be stolen in an instant. And yet, even as that truth hollowed him, it also defined him. It became the wellspring of the quiet dignity and unexpected tenderness that would make the world love him not only as a star, but as a man. Life would test him again through his beloved sister Kim. She was diagnosed with leukemia, and from that moment, Keanu's life became a pendulum swinging between the blinding lights of Hollywood and the sterile corridors of hospitals. On screen, the world saw him as Neo, the indestructible savior. Off-screen, he was a brother in a thin hospital chair, reading aloud through endless nights while fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Friends remember how he quietly bought a home near Los Angeles, so Kim would never feel far from him, how he rearranged entire shooting schedules to fly back to Toronto at a moment's notice, how he turned down roles without explanation because some days nothing in the world mattered more than simply sitting at her bedside. Kim fought with unimaginable courage, and after long years of treatment, she eventually reached remission. From that crucible of sorrow grew one of his most extraordinary hidden legacies. Without speeches, without headlines, Keanu quietly founded a charitable foundation dedicated to children's hospitals and cancer research. He gave millions but never attached his name, never sought applause. It was gratitude, whispered thanks to every doctor and nurse who had stood by his sister. Some wounds strike in a single night. That night came for Keanu in October 1993, when River Phoenix, his closest friend and chosen brother, collapsed outside the Viper Room in Los Angeles and never rose again. River was only 23, consumed by a fatal overdose. For Hollywood, it was the loss of a rising star. For Keanu, it was the theft of his other half. They had been more than colleagues. They were two young men from broken homes, each carrying loneliness like a hidden wound, finding in each other a reflection that made the chaos survivable. River was fire, dazzling, restless, untamed. Keanu was stone, steady, grounding, quietly protective. Together they created a balance that felt unbreakable, but the unbreakable shattered overnight. Those close to him recall that Keanu did not erupt when the news came. Instead, he folded into silence. The pain was too sacred to display, so he buried it and carried it forward like a ghost that followed him from set to set. The loss carved into every role he took afterward. Every triumph of his career in the years that followed was haunted by the silence of a friend who should have been there to share it. The body, like the heart, has limits, and for Keanu Reeves, every film has carved those limits deeper until pain itself became his most relentless companion. The world worshipped the myth of the indestructible warrior, but what it never saw was the man limping into the shadows after the cameras cut, carrying pain stitched into his very frame. In 1999, The Matrix demanded everything. To become Neo, Keanu turned his body into a weapon. Weeks of martial arts left his muscles screaming. Wire work twisted his frame until every joint begged for mercy, and a neck injury forced him to wear braces while still learning to fight. He bent reality on screen, but off-screen he bent himself into agony. Surgeons performed delicate neck surgery, fusing vertebrae. Most would have surrendered. Keanu did not. Before the scars had even healed, still strapped in a brace, he returned to training. Then came resurrection. In 2014, when many of his peers were fading into small roles, John Wick struck like lightning. Keanu trained with brutal dedication, days on shooting ranges, weeks of choreography so punishing that bruises turned his body into a living map of sacrifice. His aging knees screamed in protest, yet he refused to let stunt doubles do the work. For Keanu Reeves, glory has never been gentle. Every triumph left a scar. Keanu's romantic life was never the glittering parade that Hollywood adores. Instead, it was a path filled with tender beginnings and heartbreaks that would carve scars deeper than applause could ever heal. His first true romance came in the late 1980s with actress Jill Schoelen. For 3 years they held on to each other like young dreamers, but their differences pulled them apart. For Keanu, it was the shattering of his first fragile belief that love could become home. Among the Hollywood rumors, 2 connections stood apart. Sandra Bullock, his radiant partner in Speed, confessed years later that she had once harbored a crush. Keanu admitted the feeling was mutual, yet both chose to protect what mattered more. They created a friendship that has endured more than 3 decades. Winona Ryder became something closer to a soul twin, 2 guarded souls who recognized themselves in each other's silence. Biscuits. T-Love would return in a form that felt undeniable. In 1998, at a party for his band Dogstar, Keanu met actress Jennifer Syme. Their connection was immediate and profound. For a man who had grown up with emptiness where a father should have stood, Jennifer was more than romance. She was a promise. Soon they moved in together, creating a modest sanctuary where ordinary moments felt like treasures. By 1999, Jennifer was pregnant with their first child. For Keanu, it was not simply joy. It was redemption. The dream he had carried since boyhood, of a stable home, of holding a daughter in his arms, was within reach. He prepared for her arrival with a tenderness that surprised even his closest friends. Then came the cruelty that words can barely hold. On Christmas Eve of 1999, their daughter Ava was stillborn. The nursery they had prepared stood silent, filled not with a baby's cries, but with unbearable quiet. Friends recall Keanu's haunted stillness, the way his eyes seemed to carry a weight beyond language, the silence of a man whose hope had been torn from him before he could even hold it. The loss struck at the very heart of their love. For a fleeting moment, Keanu had believed he was on the verge of healing the old wounds that had marked his life. But fate was not finished with him. In April 2001, the phone call came, the kind of call that splits a life into before and after. Jennifer Syme, the woman who had been his steady flame, was gone. The car accident had taken her instantly. Those who stood near him recalled not a scream or a collapse, but something far more haunting: stillness. He froze as though the very air had been torn from his lungs. At the funeral, Keanu walked forward with Jennifer's coffin on his shoulder, his head lowered, his expression unreadable, yet devastating in its restraint. Each step seemed to carry not just the weight of the casket, At the unbearable truth that half of his heart was being lowered into the ground. Cinema demanded not just performance, but physical transformation. The Matrix required months of martial arts drills so merciless that he staggered out trembling. Wirework twisted his frame, choreography bruised his skin, until came a spinal injury so grave that doctors warned paralysis was a possibility. John Wick demanded even more. Live fire training until his fingertips blistered, judo throws until his shoulders ached. Choreography so punishing that bruises became a living map of sacrifice. By John Wick. Chapter 4. The price had been carved visibly into his stride. Knees worn down by years of punishing impacts, tendons stiff, every landing sending shocks through joints long past their prime. Then, in his 6th decade, came the cruel reminder that no body can defy time forever. On the set of Good Fortune, his knee gave way with a sound he described as like a potato chip breaking. The injury was symbolic, the clearest sign that even legends cannot outrun age. "My heart wants to keep going," he admitted quietly, "but I'm not sure my knees agree." What breaks the heart is not the injury itself, but the way Keanu meets it. He does not curse his body or rage against age. Instead, he adapts, trading punishing gym sessions for gentler rituals, long swims, quiet walks, stretches performed with the patience of prayer. Fans who see him now notice the subtle limp, the careful way he lowers himself into a chair, the fleeting wince he hides behind a smile. These are not signs of weakness, but living proof that every triumph has been bought with sacrifice. At 60, Keanu Reeves stands as more than just an actor. He is a warrior of endurance, a man who has turned frailty into strength, pain into purpose, loss into love. His body bears the undeniable marks of time and sacrifice, knees worn, tendons stiff, strength tested. And yet those very marks are what make him extraordinary. They are not the end of his legend, but the proof of it. The tragedy of Keanu Reeves is not that he has suffered. It is that he has suffered so quietly, so gracefully, turning every wound into wisdom, every loss into a deeper capacity for love. He has lost a father, a best friend, a daughter, the love of his life, and watched his sister battle for her life. His body is breaking down from decades of giving everything to his craft. Yet he remains Hollywood's rarest treasure, a man whose greatest performances have been not on screen, but in the quiet dignity with which he has faced a life that has asked everything of him. At 60, Keanu Reeves is living proof that true strength is not about never falling. It is about rising every time you fall, carrying your scars with grace, and somehow still believing in goodness, despite a world that has shown you its cruelest face. He is the man we all wish we could be, not because his life has been easy, but because it has been impossibly hard, and he has met every challenge with the quiet courage of a true hero.